Welcome back to Powerful Women of Harford County. I'm here with my friends. We're here to talk business, pleasure, and everything in between. I'm Gillian. Just wanted to introduce myself.
I'm Vicki.
And I'm Luz.
And I'm Heather.
Gina can't join us today, right? And Megan is on her way, so maybe she'll be able to pop in before we close out today.
Okay. All right, so we are going to talk about Black History Month. February is ending. It's been a month that feels like a year. What does Black history mean to you? Start with Gillian.
For me, Black history is just an additional celebration. I mean, I try my best to always, throughout the year, remind people and educate people about the importance of Black history in our culture, in our country. You know, it kind of seems like Black people and Black women are always under attack for some reason, no matter how small we try to minimize ourselves. So now we're just going to be big. And being a mother of 5 Black women, I think becoming a parent was a big thing for me, you know, making sure that my children are empowered and that we don't relive what history has deemed for us.
Black history for me is something that I live every day and try to celebrate every day in all that I do. And that's from wearing T-shirts that have messages, backgrounds that have messages, and, you know, just making sure that the people that I surround myself with, that everything that I do is maybe a learning opportunity for them, you know, not like I'm trying to force it, but that they may be able to see something in me that they hadn't seen before, or recognize something that's relative to African Americans that they didn't notice before.
And Luz, what about you?
Thank you all for sharing that. Well, for me, as you know, a Latina immigrant, one is an opportunity to give thanks and to continue my path of education and appreciation. You know, I remind my kids sometimes when we are out at a restaurant that if it wasn't for Black people's sacrifice, we wouldn't be sitting here eating with everyone else. You know, so whenever I get a chance, you know, to educate those around me who may not know as much, whether it's because they're children or adults who aren't exposed to the culture for either linguistic reasons or whatever, it's, I think, my responsibility to make sure that we acknowledge the sacrifice and the contribution of our Black brothers and sisters to the fact, you know, the history, the fact that we are all in a different world in this country. We're living and benefiting from a different world than folks before us. And not too long ago, you know, 70 years ago, we wouldn't be able to be having this conversation. So you know, it's an opportunity to give thanks. That is what Black History Month is, and to continue learning. So what about you, Heather? What does it mean to you?
To me, it's a reminder to people that, you know, this wasn't that long ago, that, like you said, we had segregation and things were not different, because they are in some ways the same, but things were worse then. And as someone who I have been bullied for different reasons as a child, and it took me a long time to realize that wasn't discrimination. It didn't stop me from going to school. It didn't stop me from going to a restaurant. It didn't stop me from, you know, interacting with my peers, or it wouldn't have stopped me from, you know, participating in certain activities or going to certain places. It might have been a social isolation kind of thing, but there is so much more that other people have been through than anything I could ever even dream of. And we need to remember that. We need to acknowledge that. And we need to look at the contributions that Black people have made that make our country what it is, that make our world what it is. Inventions, art, history, science. It's just a reminder that we need to celebrate the things that we are not always looking at, that we're not teaching in schools, that we need to go outside our box and look for contributions.
So I have a question,
Mhm.
and this is something that so Sierra is in 8th grade, and she came in here yesterday and was talking to Nate and I, and she was like, "We're reading a story about, something that was real, but the names are not real, and like, so you're learning about a real thing that happened, but they changed the names, and so of course Nate was like, "Oh no, they're trying to whitewash even Black history." And we started talking about how much Black history did we actually learn in school. So where do you feel like you learned the most Black history? Because I will absolutely, now that I'm an adult, tell you that it was not in school. It was very minimal, the basics: Malcolm X, Rosa Parks, Harriet Tubman, Martin Luther King. But who else did you hear about in school, and how do we extend that education and share that knowledge from generation to generation if it is not being given in school, unless you get into higher education? Obviously that's different, you still select your classes, but how do we ensure that this information is passed on?
Yeah, a lot of
Well, I
the
mean,
education that is given is about the same couple of people every year. We all know about Rosa Parks and Harriet Tubman, but there's so much more, so many more figures in history.
Yeah. And maybe the reason, to just quickly respond to your question, Gillian, I only started learning what I would consider real Black history when I was a 12th grader, because I had a teacher for it was an AP social studies class, who was committed to making sure. She was this Italian woman, Mrs. Daddario. I'll never forget her. She was committed to teaching us about, the true U.S. And that included some very painful discussions, uncomfortable discussions, really, because there weren't many of us, Black and brown folk in her class. But I think, her goal was to open up our minds and prepare us for that next step, which is, like you said, if you go to college, there might be an opportunity to learn more. And I chose to read this book called The Women of Brewster Place by Gloria Naylor. And that book was incredible to me. I had never read anything quite like it, and it was magical. And that, of course, led me to Toni Morrison, who's like my just incredibly talented, but is one of my two favorite writers. I can't quite make her my favorite, but I will say she's right up there. And just even learning about English books from different authors, that is a big step that high school should be taking. But why are they not taking that step? I think because people are afraid to learn about the truth.
yeah, and I know for me, growing up as a military brat, and then also with families, with my relatives being in the South, the real way that it was learned was at home. And even friends of mine, in my generation, it was always said, this is what we're going to teach at home, because we can't depend on the public school system to teach it and teach it right. So, it's up to parents, I think, to be able to teach it as well. But also we can mix it up in the public school system. Like, we don't have to talk about just Martin Luther King Jr. in January. There are so many other figures, and even, even in other settings, there are just these key figures, like some of you mentioned, that we always talk about. And there are so many more people that we should start talking about and learning about. And even to this day, in this age, even in our county, there are people that we can celebrate, that people are just learning about countywide, but perhaps in their community, folks knew about them. And so we just have to continue to talk more. And I know that for me, one of the things I became involved in about 2 or 3 years ago was oral history. And that's so important, because that's the legacy for what happened. And it's coming, it's not written. You can't change somebody's words on film. And so that's critical too.
Yeah, and I went through the list of Harford County living treasures at one point, and the majority are white, and we need to work on maybe nominating some of our older folks who would do a great job with those histories.
I think that's another important point too, Heather. Sometimes we don't know what we can do and what's available. So the people who know about that you can do Harford County Living Treasures are white people. And, I'm going to assume in years, decades past, a Black person wasn't considered in this county for that, for that honor. But those are things that, we have to continue to educate as community, and which is great. Why it's wonderful that you're so engaged is because you are helping to let the community know what's available and what those options are, and spreading the word, honestly, more than I've heard of in a while.
Yeah, one of the most recent ones was Richard Presbury, I think, the first Black volunteer firefighter for Bel Air. And he did a bunch of other amazing things too. But there are not enough people of color as living treasures.
What are some of the activities that happened in Harford County to celebrate Black history? Because I know that, we kind of go back and forth. There are times when there are lots of activities, and then there are times that it's almost like we're trying to rebury, the accomplishments of people who are different in this county. So what are some of the activities that happened this month?
Should we talk about Vicki's amazing event first, or leave the best for last?
Do it all.
Yeah, that was an awesome event. The NAACP had its Freedom Fund lunch in February. Typically, it's held in January, but instead we did a service event in January and decided to do it, the Freedom Fund lunch in February, and it was amazing. It probably was the biggest. It was the biggest Black History celebration in the county. Oh, yeah. And just celebrating also, the theme was mentoring and making sure that we were celebrating Black men and uplifting Black men, which I don't know has been done before. But that was so impactful and interesting because I don't think that a lot of people who are Black or white in this county have seen 6, accomplished men on a stage talking about their journey. I don't think that some people got it, and kind of looked at it from the lens of, why aren't there others up there? But I mean, think about the last time you saw 6 Black men on stage talking and so articulate. It was a sight to see, and something that I want to see more often happen in this county. We're actually going to do a follow-up, and specifically for our men. We don't have enough of it, and we need to do more of it. But it was an awesome event. It really was. I'm thankful to everybody who was able to support it and come.
So Vicki gave about the NAACP. There were some other things, though, right, that happened in Harford County?
I mean, there were some acknowledgments that I saw. I don't know that there were any. I'm sure there were 1 or 2 events that I may be skipping, but I think mostly there were acknowledgments.
The Langston Hughes event was scheduled for earlier in the month and got moved. For the Langston Hughes Youth Oratorical Contest.
Right, and that's happening today.
Yeah. And then I think St. John's Episcopal Church usually has some reenactments or readings, or I don't know what they do, some kind of historical.
I know they did something with the Ice Festival yesterday, right? Yeah. But I'm not sure.
Yeah. That celebrated Black history?
Well, no. They they had a ice sculpture of Frederick Douglass.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
Yeah, so that was different.
Listen, this is Harford County. Every little bit helps. Take what you can get. I did see someone posted in like the Edgewood family page that they are looking for, I guess male role models.
Well, that's CASA. CASA has an initiative that is that they've been doing for a while. I'm on the CASA board, and it is looking for trying to encourage mentoring, first African Americans and second males. And so that's just something that's been happening for a while. So it wasn't specific to Black history.
Oh, okay. Okay. I love that. I saw that and I was like, this is exciting. Just we need that. That's what we need.
And for the 3rd year in a row, we did a proclamation. District F, the county council, gave a proclamation for Black History Month. This year, it went to the National Panhellenic MPHC What's the C? Council. National Panhellenic Council, Harford County Alumni Council.
It's a lot of words.
The president is Kyra Skunyon, so she came and accepted the proclamation. They are amazing. It's the Divine Nine. I'm sure people have heard of that term. 9 fraternities and sororities that do amazing things here in the county. Everything from welcoming kids back to school on the first day and having little parades for them for attendance, to hosting literacy nights in schools, trash cleanups, feeding people at the soup kitchens, toiletry drives, you name it. They are out in the communities.
I was happy to see on some social media pages, like Harford County government, the library, some other pages where there was an acknowledgement of Black History Month. I would like to see that more, and I would like to see there be specific, events or activities that they do for Black History Month. And then I would love to see the county actually publish it or be deliberate about, capturing it, or when we visit Harford, being deliberate about capturing those events to bring people to our community during that time. And plus, I think there are more and more people who are aware and who want to do more, and there's just no central hub. But I think the county can be instrumental in doing that. And also, like I said, visit Harford. The NAACP can as well, but I think that it's more that that our county government should be trying to pull that together, or someone who has a countywide reach should be doing that.
I wondered if the county was even going to acknowledge it with the federal changes, but it didn't seem like it affected anything. Have you seen any effects, anybody in the community or even nationwide? I mean, even the president held a reception the other day, so I don't know that there's been any changes due to the
executive orders.
Thank you, executive orders.
I love this. Do that again.
No, I've been looking at Luce's face through every word that you just said, Heather, and just waiting quietly and patiently.
Heather, yes, the president held a reception that was, I think, an embarrassment in terms of Black history. I heard some of the clips where he truly wasn't celebrating Black history, more like saying how he has, quote unquote, helped Black folks like no one else before. And then he talked for a bit. He dragged Tiger Woods, who, by the way, looks like he's 90 years old. Whatever happened to that guy? He's younger than I, for God's sake. But he dragged out Tiger Woods to announce that the president, will, initiate the building of a memorial for, important U.S. figures, which will include Black Americans, like, he mentioned Frederick Douglass and Harriet Tubman. And he also mentioned a lot of sports, like Jackie Robinson, and he mentioned Muhammad Ali. So, that's what that was about. And sadly, we would try to move like from a sort of reductive thinking. I guess that any acknowledgement helps. And I get that. But, from the president of the United States, we should expect more, a more serious, a broader tone than just reducing Black folks to, sports figures and entertainers. It's embarrassing, to be honest. But what I was going to say is, recently there was a news story about Harford County and all of the important historical events that were civil rights related in this county. And I know that some of you have gone on that civil rights bus ride around the county. But Vicki, to your point, this is a really important deal that the county, visitors bureau, or, I'm not sure what to call it, they could truly, take this, and we can be proud of the county's history and bring people in, kind of like some folks on the Eastern Shore do with Harriet Tubman and, the museum. So I think that presents a great opportunity. That's what I was trying to say.
And I will say I did not watch the reception, so I just knew there was one. I would just, I just think it's to sign an executive order and say we're not going to have any celebrations and then have a celebration. It's just silly. But
Luce, that is part of the plan that has been in the works since I initiated the tours about 3 years ago, and recently, probably about a year or so ago, Harford Community College applied for some funding to do the tour, and Visit Harford would oversee that initiative because the money was going to Visit Harford with a collaboration with the NAACP and the Harford Community College. So we will continue the tours at some point. We did not do it last year, but we anticipate doing it this year. Fingers crossed that we get some additional funding because we know that it's important in the community and that people enjoy it. Also, there's also the thought of should we focus on civil rights or African American history, because there's a lot of both. And so I just invite people to kind of pay attention and look out for that as we continue to evolve and see what funding we're able to secure to expand that in the county. And it could mean other organizations as well, like Hosanna has been wonderful at promoting African American history, the Colored School, and so on.
So now I have questions, which maybe you can. Because Harford Community College has their civil rights app, and that's been wonderful, and the tour was kind of based off of some of those things. Visit Harford recently talked about a grant that they received and that they made a civil rights trail, and I suggested to them, the new executive director, that they should speak to you and Dr. Carmel, and that there already was an app with all of these things.
He already knows all that stuff.
Okay.
There is collaboration, and it's all in one. He's very familiar. Tyler's very familiar, and we've all had conversations.
Good. Well, I didn't say his name. You did.
Sorry, you can edit that out.
Edit.
Beep.
No, I love Tyler. I just wanted to make sure that he is aware that there is.
He is.
Good.
Mm-hmm.
Good.
Do you guys feel like with the current political climate and everybody being so fearful of even, I guess, saying out loud? I know this is one of the things that, we have really had to be careful with what we say and how we say work-wise, at work. And we've had to pull together some quick meetings just to have a discussion on how we address things. I think that there are people that are fearful that with all of this, attack on DEIA, that they will, especially nonprofits, that they would lose funding or that they would become a target based on how they chose to celebrate. So, I just want to know do you feel like people will pull back from things that they may have wanted to do because they're fearful of losing money? Because, the fact is money talks.
Yeah, I think that's a very real concern, Gillian. And I think that's been happening already. I mean, we're not talking about something that may occur. These things there have been celebrations canceled at universities, for example, Vicki earlier, before we started recording, brought up the issue with the Navy. There was, the naval engineers, I think the annual gathering that occurs during Black History Month, that was canceled. I mean, it's just, it really is shocking how quickly some institutions will bend the knee. But, from a legal perspective, there was a ruling this week that, here out of Baltimore, actually, the Third Circuit Court of Appeals is our circuit, includes Maryland. And a district court judge out of Baltimore said that he was temporarily enjoining the application of that executive order, the DEIA executive order, because in his opinion, when the trial does occur, it will clearly show that this executive order is overbroad. It's overreaching. because supposedly it's based on the Supreme Court decision, right? The Harvard decision that severely limited and eliminated race as a consideration for school admission. So the executive order that you're referring to comes from that. And it says now, well, all, race or cultural or ethnic considerations or, considerations involving accessibility issues for disabled persons, etc. Those are all considered unconstitutional, which is not. It is not true. So it's really important for us to educate ourselves about what the law really is, not what some of these EOs, which are not tantamount to laws, but more like guidance that the president, the executive branch, gives to the other branches, and also to recipients of federal financial, assistance, as they call it. But great question. I think it's worth, thinking about and educating ourselves before we take any adverse action, right? To eliminate celebrations, to eliminate people, who may want to participate and create a culture of inclusion, yeah.
I think that's an important reminder, Luce, that executive orders are not law. And then also in reference to the National Guard pulling out of the Frederick Douglass parade, when we were talking about that earlier, we were saying how that doesn't even, I hope people start thinking beyond that. And it came up that Frederick Douglass, one reason they came back is because he's an American. So why would you pull out of a parade? When it could be anybody else that you'd want to talk to. And why would you pull out just because it's Frederick Douglass? But if people start thinking about it from that lens, that Black people built this country for free, period. And, and there should be some celebration and acknowledgement of that.
I think that one of the things for me that I've learned is that, people are fearful because we just don't know of the unknown. We're fearful of the unknown. We get caught up in statistics. And so the first thing people will say is, statistically, this, gives African Americans or whatever an advantage. And the fact is we're still only but 13.7% of the US population, And so how much benefit is there really to these DEIA processes that, or policies that assist us? You have to have the skill, so for me to turn to someone and say, oh, you got into college or you got into an exclusive college because of DEIA policies, like you had to have the will, you had to have the education, you still had to come with something. You didn't just show up and say, you know what, hey, I am your friendly African neighborhood African American. Give me, an admission to Harvard or whatever. So I think that we have gotten so caught up on that, and people really do believe that. When you're uneducated, you do believe that. If you live in a town where you are not accustomed to being around African Americans and all you see on the TV is what is being put out, you don't know any better. And so you think the only way they're able to progress is by these DEIA policies, so we need to stop it.
For so many years and centuries, it has been an unfair advantage for white people. And this is just undoing some of that with these, DEI initiatives. It's not giving you an unfair advantage. It's lessening the gap.
One thing, too, that I know with Black History Month is that folks don't like to talk about how people were enslaved. And I think that when we talk about history, that comes out. And maybe that's a reason why some people don't want to talk about it or find it embarrassing, because their families were directly engaged in this. And we do know there are folks in this county that people celebrate who owned people and who consider them property, and their families live among us, whether it's a white family or those who were enslaved. And so even, getting back to, we had the conversation about Frederick Douglass, maybe that's not something that people want to have shared, that this brilliant man, was considered property at some point. But those are all things we have to reconcile with, even in this county, even people that, are revered in this county who what do they say? They founded the city or whatever. They really didn't. They just murdered people and, and moved them out and made them property and do work for them, those people should not be celebrated. And we find consistently that folks in this county want to negate that. And I find myself too saying that you have a choice. It wasn't, those were just the times, you had a choice. Not everybody did that, but you had a choice. And if you had a choice, you're on the wrong side of history and you made the wrong choice.
And it doesn't harm anybody to say, yes, my family did those things and it was wrong. But for some reason, people can't bring themselves to do that. Like, I am working on my family tree. I got some OG colonizers in there. Whatever they did was wrong. And it doesn't hurt me to say that. Even if they're, there's one of them's on a monument. I can say that's ridiculous. Especially in Harford County, those families should be working to say, hey, my family did this and let's talk about it.
Yeah, I think acknowledgement goes a long way. I agree. I did want to share something along those lines since we're sharing information. Yesterday, I saw a YouTube video of a reporter who goes through a series of lakes in Georgia. She talks about Central Park in New York and the lake and the actual park itself, and how so many points of leisure for white people were really born out of the destruction, the rape, the pillaging of places that used to have thriving Black towns. So she went through like Lake Lanier in Georgia, and how there used to be an actual beautiful, thriving Black like city where the lake now is. And it was literally razed to the ground, burnt down, people murdered, children, women. I mean, because there was an allegation against two young men. And then it becomes a lake where white folks primarily can go have fun and swim and do whatever, folks do. And Central Park, of course, is probably the most well-known example, right? Seneca Village, and I forget what the name of the other, city, not city, but what the other part of, that borough, what it was called. But there were people living there where folks now, sunbathe and play or whatever. That was someone's, ancestral home. And this is a part of the erasure, right? I did not know this. And why don't we talk about it? And you're right, Heather. I wish more people were like you. Sometimes, we have to go through painful realizations to heal and to move on. But we're not doing that. And it's not just Harford County, it's not just Harford County. It's all over. So I just don't know how we would change that.
And I think it's interesting that, white family may say, we don't want to talk about that. Black families say the same thing. It's a horrible experience with consequences that we still feel today and cannot be ignored. And I think that's why we have leaders to try to bring us together and really realize that we have some commonalities. We all bleed the same. It's all red, all of us. We all have the same bodies, despite, I've heard some folks say that Black people have extra bones or good gracious, we have what is his name now? He's the JFK, whatever his name is, RFK, saying the craziness he's talking about. I literally had a white man say that Black people have extra bones. And it's just like, that's just basic anatomy. Like, if you graduated from high school, you should know that.
Would you say last time a whole adult said that? You said a grown person said that?
Yeah, a whole adult like my age said that. So I'm going to assume he did not graduate from, let me just stop right there.
He needed that DEI to get into one of those colleges. I'm always surprised when I hear the things that come out of people's mouths, and it's based on lack of education. We didn't learn a lot. Seneca Village, I didn't learn about that. I want to say maybe until about 5 years ago. And so it's like, and that's why it's just like you have an old employee at your job. They've been there for 30 years. They've gained all this knowledge that is not in any kind of onboarding paperwork. How do you harvest that to share it? So that's the general question. How do you harvest that information so that it does not get lost? Because it's something that's in the lineage, it's in your history, but it's not on any piece of paper because that's not where they wanted it. You know what I mean? I've heard stories about those old apartments over there in Edgewood, and how they ended up, I guess, like projects. And I didn't know about those things. And I was like, I got to start reading and researching, because if I don't educate myself, I can't educate my children. I can't pass it down, So I just feel like there's got to be something in place that we can pass down this information where it's not going to be suppressed.
But sometimes you don't find it written. So that's why I like sitting with older people, because they'll tell it. We just got to make sure we record it, because that's all we have. There's some things that have happened in this county that when I share it with somebody who's older, they tell me what happened, and then I go back, and I'm like, this is not the story, the story. And I it's very interesting, but it's also like there's an urgency to be able to document the things that they say, because they are aging, and they're going to leave us. And there's so much more that we need to know in this county. I give a lot of kudos to Dr. Carmel, who decided to capture this when no one else was doing it in the county, to decide to capture these stories, these civil rights stories. And, it's been a labor of love for him, but something that also is a lot to sustain. So should that go away, how do we keep that going in the county? How do we find out these other stories? But there's so much more that we don't know about that's happened. And I can share some things offline too that I've learned at another time, because I know we're coming up on our hour.
Maybe we could have a show. What say you all about maybe stories that have never been told? Because I'm very interested to learn about these stories that you're going to share. So we can do something like that. Yeah.
We can sit around with some other powerful women of Harco who are in their 80s and just let them talk. And, they'll want to have the cake. They'll make the cake and the tea. And we just sit around and let the camera roll. That would be fun.
And that's kind of the problem with the Living Treasure program, is you have to be a certain age. And not everybody lives that long.
Especially in the African American community.
Right.
So we can change that, can't we? That's nothing but a change.
Or, record them through another program. I don't know if Dr. Carmel's program is related to that one, or if he can,
It is, but I mean, Heather, that brings a good point. I mean, laws are made to be changed. So if we need to advocate for that, maybe we should.
How old do you have to be a living treasure now?
I want to say it's 80.
80?
Right. I'm not going to live that long, so
Stop it.
I'll never be a living.
In my
I want to say it's 80, but don't quote me on it. I have to look it up.
Yeah, can we bump that down to like retirement age?
Maybe there'll be too many people if it's not 80.
Right.
All right, well, let's bump it to 70.
Treasures.
Right, 70 at least, Gillian, right?
Sheesh. I'll try to hold on.
I love it. Well,
I know, Vicki, don't go anywhere. We need you. I'm sorry, it's 70. They have to be at least 70 years old.
Okay.
And have to have lived in Harford County for 40 years.
Wow.
Okay.
So. Or maybe the NAACP just starts their own oral history.
There's so much. Just don't add that to the list.
One group can only do so much.
Add that to the list. You're right, Heather. You're absolutely right. We can create new stuff. As we get ready to wrap up, is there anything that you all are doing to kind of in the Black History Month or things that you hope to see that maybe you haven't seen or you're going to do or anything like that?
I'm definitely participating in those blackout dates. I'm on it. I'm like, all right, let me buy all my junk beforehand.
Can you share like the dates?
I think the 28th is when we're supposed to be not shopping, purchasing anything. I mean, if people had balls, we could accomplish so much change, so much faster. The problem is there's fear. Everybody's fearful, and I get it. But I really would love to see the impact that it causes for people who, if people who don't actually shop and participate. And, I would love to see a good showing us a good standing of that. So we'll see.
It'll be a good one on the 28th. So we'll see. Yeah.
I'm excited about that.
I told someone yesterday that I needed to go to the grocery store, and she said, "For what?" And I said, "Food." And then she says, "Well, what about no shopping?" And I said, "That's the 28th. I mean, I have to eat between now and the 28th."
You're going to be slim and trim, baby.
And she said, but I went shopping for the month. And I said, but I buy things like fruits and vegetables. And I just thought that was hilarious. It was like, I didn't know I was not supposed to shop during the whole month. I got to eat.
Oh,
no. That one day will be so impactful. I tell people, like, for us, being a nonprofit, if we do not, if we close for a day, for a snow day, I think it's something like 30,000 or something that we lose a day. So when you think about that, if we all stand and say we are not shopping just for one day, how much it will impact, the government, our funding, or whatever. I'm like, that's what made me so interested, because I'm thinking for one day we lose that much money. And we're a small agency. So imagine if everybody just decides, I'm not shopping today.
It's interesting because I had someone also, I'll tell you another funny story, take it further from not shopping. We were actually going to move some money between bank accounts and I said the Friday would work best for me. And the person was like, that's the day that we're not supposed to do anything dealing with commerce. And I was thinking, oh, it's just shopping. But I'm like, yeah, you're right. No money moved on that Friday. So money stays in our pockets on Friday.
That's right. And speaking of banks, One United is the country's largest, Black-owned bank. So maybe, switching. I've been thinking of switching some of my accounts, to Black-owned or banks like JP Morgan Chase, which are not eliminating their DEI programs. Everyone else seems to be. So JP Morgan Chase is one of the few, and Fidelity. So, One United, just, keep that in mind. One plug-in. I've started to listen to urban radio. So if you have Sirius XM, you like to hear like talk, radio, there is a station called Urban View. I forget what the number is, but it's right next to, all the talkies like Patriot Talk and all that crap. So Urban View is actually
listen to it every day.
Yes, it's refreshing. They have great hosts for the most part. And my mornings now, when I drop my kids off, I listen to Dr. Greg Carr in the morning with Lamont King. They are amazing, and I'm learning so much. And, it's so inspiring. I stopped listening to, Morning Joe after the election, and I'm glad that I'm never going back to that show.
I need to check that out because I listen to the news and it's too much.
It is. It's been overwhelming.
Yeah. Well, what I'm going to do is go edit this podcast and get it posted by the end of Black History Month.
Yeah.
Yeah. Great.
I promise, Gillian.
Great podcast, y'all.
Yeah.
So also on Urban View, I don't know if you guys are familiar with Joe Madison. He's called the Black Eagle, and he used to have a show. He passed away last year, and he was really just so impactful. And then Clay Kane is on there now. Clay's on in the afternoon, but just if you and it's 2 hours, and it's kind of like a C-SPAN setup almost.
Yeah.
But it's great stuff. I'm glad you brought that up, Luce.
Of course, it's changed, the way that I listen to anything in the car.
Or you can listen to podcasts like this one.
There you go. That's right.
Yes. All right, ladies. It's always good chatting with you.
Yeah.
I like this
We'll
format.
see you next time.
Happy Black
Bye.
Yeah, me too.
Take care, everyone.
All right. See you all.
All right. Bye. Happy
Bye.
Black History Month.
Happy Black History Month.
Happy.